Hello everybody, nice to have you here. It was a long time, I didn't publish anything, so let's come back to business. That was a long 4 months for me, without any content, even without the work. But I keep myself up to date and had some nice ideas I want to present. And basically also, directly after coming back, I landed into the Barcelona partner training. And that's motivated me to tell you today a little bit about a builder again. Trust me, this story will never end. As you see, that's currently quite big hype on what a builder is doing, and that's a new and only extensibility model of Adobe Commerce systems. So more and more people starting to deep dive into it, and that's why I want to proceed to make those videos. So the Barcelona Bootcamp was mostly about the extensibility and about new Adobe Commerce as a SaaS service. But what I will show you today, it's more an Adobe Builder use cases again, and what we've done there. So you can do it on any other system, because a builder technically can be used on on-premise projects, on cloud projects, and on SaaS, which will come in Europe, as for me, soon. So let's not waste the time, and I will show you and I will guide you through the labs that we worked together on those 2 intensive days. And one more note that Adobe publicly released on a GitHub the lab, which you can do yourself. If you want to, you don't need to have a SaaS service for that. You can use just the usual Adobe Commerce system and go through. I will paste a link inside of the description, and also you can just find it here. So let's jump in. Don't be surprised, I'm not doing it right now straight away. It was a screen recording from the event itself. I will cut off some stuff, but I will guide you through what was done. So honestly, I really want to tell thank you to Adobe, because the preparation was very nice and everything went quite smoothly. So we received all required credentials and login as an Adobe customer work from the first try, which was already nice. As you can see, that's a SaaS system. There are not so many changes in usual commerce, so don't be surprised. It's everything there. You can find it on any other commerce system. Despite, as you can see, there are no admin and developer settings, so they're missing. But all other are there. So, and if you go through the menu, you will also see that there are no content elements. So the CMS pages, blogs, so everything is related to the content is not there anymore, because the idea of Adobe SaaS service is to headless integration with edge delivery services from Adobe, or if you want to with any other front-end technology. But Luma or base template officially gone, so don't expect to see it there. So the front-end also quite the same. There nothing too much new. That's an EDS front-end. And so the task we wanted to do, or Adobe wanted us to do, is to add the reviews from external system. So they're not stored on Adobe Commerce, they're loaded from external system and being displayed here on the PDP page. So first step you have to do, if you want to load something from external system, you need to create a mesh, because if you think about the older manners, how you change in the front end, you can for sure exchange the front end that will fetch external source when you load the page, as example, also possible. But here, as we want to see how Adobe Commerce or Adobe Builder environment can be used for fulfill this task with all Adobe services, so we will use Adobe API Mesh. And for that, we need to merge 2 APIs together. That's what you can do with Adobe API Mesh. And to do it, you need to define, first of all, the Adobe Commerce source, which is your GraphQL API of your Magento Adobe Commerce system. And in the second part, we define the ratings API, which is, in this case, like just an example. And then you define the operations. So you have a ratings, and then you define in the sample rate in JSON to define the schema, how the API will look like. Additional to that, we define in the resolver. It's technically just to merge one value of APIs into another API so that your native Adobe Commerce products GraphQL endpoint will return you the ratings which come in from third-party system. So and by defining the resolver, we define in the new type. You can see here an additional type depths, and then we have the average value and the total. And we extend in simple product view with a rating field. So this means in your GraphQL output for the simple products, you will see the ratings fields inside. And where the ratings will come from, you define inside of the resolver. And the resolver looks like following. So you have resolver for simple product view. You define in the selection set as an SKU. And then you add into the context that the ratings, and you define in those two fields, average and total. And that's your response which is coming back. So in this manner, you inject in one API into another API. After that's done, we create in our mesh or update in our mesh, depends on which state you are. And after this is done, you receive a new API, which is ready to fetch the data by mesh from two different sources and deliver it to your frontend. So at the next step is extending your frontend. We are here in Adobe Edge Delivery Services, and if you don't know what Adobe Edge Delivery Services is, I will reference you to the documentation. You can find it into the video description. If you're using any other frontend, then it's up to you already, because your GraphQL already returns your value, and you can just place the rating value whatever allocation you want on your page. It can be PLP, PDP, and so on. In our case, we showcased how the Edge Delivery Services work too. And unfortunately, it can be a little bit chaotic if you're following this video. So don't take it like an action, more like understanding that's how it can be done. Because if you really start to work with the DS, you will have your own problems and own challenges. So you have to get used to it. Now, honestly, just relax and watch. Because I also just follow with the documentation itself. So what are we doing? We extending the build MGS within EDS by adding the new component, which is dropping the storefront, and then you extending the default query which return from the Adobe Commerce to also get you the ratings for the average and totals. Because in standard those fields are not there, so your frontend doesn't know about their existence. So after it's done, we need to extend also the scripts initializers PDP.js, because we want to render it to the JS, and we need to add this particular transformer there. So to receive the data, we just add it. So again, extend with a new data that we're receiving from the Adobe Commerce. So we are doing it into this file. So we're doing it as follow. Basically, it's quite simple. So I also have a question which I cannot answer myself, and if somebody from Adobe team is watching, I will be happy to hear the answer. Why this transformer is not there out of the box? Because it looks for me like not much customization. I mean, I don't know what influence will be on the front end, if it will be already out of the box of the native EDS components. If anybody know the answer, please. Then we technically just extending the front end, like replacing the div where the ratings have to be loaded to. That's was clear, and I would say quite simple task. If you're new from EDS, you can find that every, let's say, block on the page contains their own folder, which is CSS and JavaScript file. And in our case, we go into the product detail.js because we want to add it to the product detail page. And we add in the new div there with class product details rating. And then we also define the constant for the query selector. So to initialize our div, we just enter it. And then as a next step, which is quite easy, we just append in our rating div with the data we received from the new extended GraphQL schema, which comes from API mesh. And that's it. So it's quite simple. And then we also need to make a yarn install drop-ins, which reinitialize our drop-ins, and we will see our changes on the front end. And we need to start the yarn server for the storefront. And then we go in on the front end, finding the required product. And then we can see 1-star average out of 599 ratings. So that's a block which we received from external system, like a data which we received from external system, and render it on our ADS component. So that was a very simple example. Let's go to something more complicated. So the next step will be to subscribe to events or to webhooks, which come in from Adobe Commerce system. For this case, we have an Adobe Builder application, which, as you can see already, has an API mesh there. That's what we worked before. And now we will start to add a new API. So we need to add a management API. It's IO management API. That's something simple. Then we need to add IO events to submit and receive events within our Adobe IO runtime. And then we need to add IO events for Adobe Commerce. So that's something already pre-built that Adobe IO runtime understands the Adobe Commerce structure. After we're done, we will see those 3 new blocks appeared in our application. So the next steps, let's configure our Adobe Commerce system. We have to go to environment and download the workspace information. And then we need to go to our project environment YAML file or environment YAML to environment file, .environment file. If it's not existed, please create it. I mean, if you're using the Adobe Starter Kit, you will have it as a template already there with all parameters you need to define. And then please fill those information. I guess I already showed it one of the previous videos, but let's maybe shortly make a recap. All of those OAuth configuration you can find within your workspace file you just downloaded, and also within the project itself. So if you go to OAuth server to server, you can find here your client ID, your client secret. Let's do it together. So we will define the client ID. We will get the client secret. We need to copy. Then we will get the technical account ID. And then we will need to have technical account email. So first ID, then email, then organization ID. And then if you'll jump to the workspace file you just downloaded, you can find the project ID and workspace ID. Yeah, and in this case, our application is more or less configured, and then you need to run IO app use merge, which will technically merge the data from your application, which is inside of the Adobe runtime, and then your local configuration. So the correct environment PHP will be configured with all required credentials from both parts. If you will not use merge, it will override your local changes. You need to do it again. Not very comfortable. And then we just deploy the application. So after we are done, we're doing the deployment. And after you deploy the application, you can just go to your runtime and you will see your actions you deployed. So there already was a set of predefined actions in this lab. Then we need to do the onboarding. Onboarding is part of the Adobe Starter Kit process. I guess I didn't make a video yet about the Starter Kit itself, but I also will reference the documentation for the Starter Kit. It is more or less a template or prepared builder project, and there is npm command which called npm run onboard, and which goes through your configuration file. If you see here on the left side, you have scripts onboarding, and then config, where you define in the events you want to run or subscribe to the providers of those events, the registration, and after you run the process, you will get everything more or less registered. And in our case, you will see 2 events into side of the Adobe Builder, which are back office order sync and commerce order sync. Yeah, and if you go then later to the one of those events, you can see that there is a runtime action that's run on this event, the provider, and to subscribed event. So that's all you can prepare with Starter Kit just by defining the JSON configuration and by running the provisioning or onboarding. It will create everything for you. You don't need to do it manually anymore. So I'll give you an example. As I worked before with a builder before the Starter Kit appeared, I need to do everything myself, then create a big bunch of documentation. I could for sure be more advanced and to also create their own scripts. I was too lazy, sorry for that. So another part of the process, what we've done, we created a smaller builder application that's technically just received the information about the order you place on Adobe Commerce, provided a new interface to see in them, and then you can ship the orders from your app builder. It's again a very simple example, just showcasing how it can be done, because like every our customer has an own ERP system which required to have the order being exported to this ERP system. We in-house has a native Adobe Commerce PHP extension that's fulfilled these needs, which has the basic configuration. If you go into SaaS, we cannot use it anymore, so we would need to switch to a builder. Okay, at this point, that was the first part of the session. I mean, I squeezed it in a small time frame, but we spent quite a bunch of time. I mean, you can imagine a lot of people. You need to go through all this process. You need to understand where to click, what to click, and so on. So yeah, doesn't really matter. I hope you found it interesting, at least to have this first small push and basic understanding how to work with a builder, and even with ADS a little bit. I mean, it was 0.000000001% of everything you will face in your development experience. And yeah, in the next video, I'll show you how to add. No spoilers. Come on. So I'll see you in the next video. Have a nice rest of the day. Bye bye.